And as you can see, we just grabbed liquidity under this low on the DXY, and now we could trade up higher in towards this liquidity. So my name is Oscar Madsen. I'm a funded trader as well as a personal trading coach. And with this weekly outlook, I go over all my Forex pairs to see what we can trade next week. So let's start off with the DXY. And as you can see here on the weekly time frame, we should start to trade up higher because as you can see, we are getting a reaction from this overall demand zone, which should push price up higher because this demand zone took out a lot of liquidity under the lows. So I'm looking for upside, but if we start breaking lows on the lower time frame, we could first see one more swipe, tapping towards this refined demand, and then trade up higher. So we're either going to trade up higher from here or one more swipe before trading up higher. Looking at the daily time frame, we are still daily bearish and we tap premium prices. So it could be that we just continue down lower after grabbing liquidity, for example, above this high. But at the moment though, let's take a look at what supply is in control. At the moment, this supply is in control, and if we swipe this high, which is actually going to be your daily fractal, we change the daily fractal as well as the order flow, and we could start to continue to trade up higher. Now we got to keep in mind that we are still daily bearish and that there was an open weekly demand zone over here where we could first trade in towards in line with that daily swing and then start to trade up higher. So keep that in mind. Looking at the 4 hour though, what I'm seeing is that we grab liquidity underneath all of these lows and that we now could grab liquidity above these highs, and from here I'm going to wait for a reaction to take a small short setup in towards this demand zone, but overall we could trade all the way down lower in towards that weekly demand and from here start to trade up higher. Only if we start to break this high, for example, then I'm going to look for those long setups, counter 4 hour and daily trend, but in line with my daily order flow and weekly order flow. So going over to Euro USD, in my opinion, we could start to look for shorts in towards that liquidity. Why? Well, if we take a look at the weekly time frame, we tapped this supply zone, we grab liquidity above this high, and as you can see, we already made a reaction from that point, but we created a new supply zone, and from here I'm looking for a further push down lower to take some liquidity and tap the discount prices. If you look at this move up, there's no liquidity, so we just reacted from nothing, in my opinion, just this demand zone, but no liquidity got taken out. So I want to see one more swipe. These are early buyers who are buying at the moment. They will get swiped, stop loss will get hit, and then I want to trade up higher. But at the moment, I still think that we could take short setups towards that 50% level. On the daily time frame, the swing is the same, so also the PVD. So I'm also looking to trade towards this liquidity point like I just explained. We now took liquidity above this high, so looking for shorts is actually quite nice. Now this is my daily fractal low, so what I'm going to be waiting on next week is to see that fractal break, create a supply zone, and then from this supply I want to look for shorts on the lower time frame. So that's what I'm waiting for. If the order flow just stays bullish, you could long all the way up higher, but that's not what I'm looking for on a weekly time frame because like I said, I want to see one more swipe. So I'm just going to wait for a daily fractal in order to trade down lower in line with that discount prices and that liquidity. Going over to the 4 hour, you can also see that we are swing bearish. We took liquidity above these highs, tapped this supply zone, and now we created our own supply zone. Although you should be careful that we do not see one more swipe before trading down lower, because this is your first step in towards the supply. So this could be early sellers, then a swipe, and then you will move down lower. Overall, I'm looking for shorts next week, but we gotta see if we break this daily fractal, we could already trade down lower. If not, we see one more swipe and then we break down lower. That's also a nice point to take a short setup. So that's what I'm waiting for Euro USD. Let's go over GBP USD. I made a trade breakdown on this one, but we are inside this supply zone. We took liquidity, and as you can see, the weekly candle, we just traded up higher. So this is really ugly for me. So I'm at least expecting to trade underneath this weekly open. And then I'm also expecting to trade in towards this refined demand zone. From here, either push up higher with that order flow or just continue down lower and take some liquidity because we took liquidity above the highs. So looking at the daily, we are daily bullish, but what can we see? We grab liquidity above this high, so we could take liquidity at the low as well as trade towards those discount prices, but that's something you need to confirm on the lower time frame. So looking at the 4-hour, what do I see? Well, we broke the order flow down lower. We're respecting the lows. Until this point, we broke the low and we created a supply zone, and from this supply I am looking to trade down lower to take liquidity at the lows and trade towards the discount prices and this open demand zone. So GBP USD is looking nice for shorts. What you can do is either already place your limits if you think that this is a strong high. If you want to be more conservative, you could go over to the 1 hour, wait for this liquidity high to get swiped, and then get your 1 hour fractal break in order to take your short setup down lower in towards this liquidity. Going over to AD USD. So first off, let's take a look. We just tapped those premium prices, but I still think that we could see some upside in towards this liquidity before seeing that move down lower. So going over to the daily time frame, what can we see? Again, like expected, we traded up higher, but we are still a bit consolidative. So this is your demand in control, but I still think that we could see a swipe up, take liquidity above this high, tap this supply zone, and from there I want to take shorts to take out all of the liquidity lows. But at the moment we could still trade up higher, definitely with a possible trade deal coming on Monday, which could cause risk on pairs to move up higher like AUD and NZD. So looking over here at the 4-hour time frame, what can we see? Well, we are 4-hour bullish, so longs are definitely nice, and we can see that we are inside a demand zone at the moment, and we grab liquidity underneath this low. So what I would be waiting for is a 4-hour fractal break. This is your fractal low. This is going to be your fractal high. So what I'm going to be waiting on is either break that fractal high in order to take longs, or swipe the low, fractal low, then this becomes your fractal high, and then you can start to look for longs. So then we can start to trade towards that liquidity and that supply. But once we reach that point, then I'm going to look for shorts to take out all of the lows. Going over to NZD USD is going to be quite the same, but we already took weekly liquidity, so that's quite tricky, and that's why I prefer AD USD. Now, of course, this demand is still in control, and we could still push up higher in towards this supply, and from there we could trade down lower before moving up higher again, for example. Looking at the daily, you could also say that this is your daily swing. Why is this not my daily swing though? Well, because as you can see, this over here is the same move as we had over here, and this was also my internal swing. So that's why this is also my internal swing and not my complete swing structure. Now, at the moment though, let's take a look at what demand is in control. That is going to be this demand zone, and this demand, or actually this demand is in control, and this could push price back up higher. So I'm looking for some more upside here on NZD USD to take some more liquidity above the highs and tap this supply. But like I said, just the same as AD USD, I think the nice short setups are from this point to trade down lower. Going over to the 4-hour, we are 4-hour bullish though, and we also have bullish order flow with this demand being in control. We now just took some internal liquidity, so we could just move up higher. But if you look at premium versus discount, we still got to make a move down lower in towards discount prices and then trade up higher. So what I'm going to be waiting for, this liquidity to grab, tap that discount prices, and then see an order flow switch in order to trade up higher in towards that higher time frame supply. So that's my game plan on NZD USD, or just short from that higher time frame weekly liquidity and take short setups from there after, of course, a 4-hour fractal break. Going over to Euro AUD, looking on the weekly time frame, we've seen a reaction from this demand zone trading up higher. Also, these discount prices pushed price up higher, but now we took some weekly or daily internal liquidity above this high, and we could trade down lower again, because as we see in this move up, there's no liquidity. So what I'm expecting is that liquidity will get taken out before we start to move up higher. Looking on the daily time frame, we also just tapped the supply zone and we grab liquidity above this high. And as you can see, we also just generated or made a little channel as well. I don't usually trade channels, but this is looking quite nice, as well as at supply and at liquidity. Now looking at the daily fractal, this was your fractal high break, and now you broke the daily fractal low, with this supply also being in control, so your order flow is also bearish. So what I'm looking for is to continue down lower, like I said, to take liquidity at this weekly low. So that's what I'm going to be waiting for on Euro AUD, or at least looking at. Going over to the 4 hour to see how I'm going to take the entry, I can see that we took weekly or 4 hour liquidity above this high. So if we start to break this low and create supply zones, then I'm just going to go on the 1 hour, look for confirmation, so fractal breaks inside that supply zone in order to trade down lower. So that's my game plan next week on Euro AUD, and it's also perfectly aligned with AUD USD that should trade up higher, and Euro USD that I'm looking to short. So let's see. Going over to GBP AUD, looking at the weekly time frame again. No liquidity in this move up higher, took liquidity above this high. So what I'm going to be expecting is that this liquidity will get taken out. We just took liquidity above this high, which could fuel the next move down lower and then trade up higher again. Looking on the daily time frame, you can see all of this liquidity. We just grabbed liquidity above this little high over here. And now this is going to be your daily fractal, which I want to break in order to trade down lower. So if we break this daily fractal, I'm going to go over to the 4 hour to look for shorts from this supply zone, which we will then create after breaking that low, because then you will have a buy before the sell, creating this supply where you could then trade down lower from. Looking on the 4 hour time frame, what can I see? Well, on the 4 hour time frame, after we break this low, like we set on the daily, which is your daily fractal, I do see some liquidity above these highs, and I would like to see a liquidity grab like this, boom, boom, and then I would like to see my fractals break in order to create some more supply zones, and that's where I take my short setups down lower all the way to take that liquidity at these lows. So enough room so I can be really patient in this case, and I don't want to hit my stop loss and miss the move. So I'm going to be very patient and wait for a clear, strong high to be created, taking liquidity, and then I'm going to go short after my fractal break. Looking at Euro NZD, looking on the weekly time frame, same thing as Euro AUD, take liquidity above the high and no liquidity in this move up, wanting to take liquidity at this low. But in this specific example, we still have the discount prices from the daily swing, which I'm about to show you, so we could still tap those as well as take liquidity. So this one is looking a little bit better. And also, what can we see? Well, we have bearish order flow with this supply being in control, so I'm just looking for sells, sells, sells towards this liquidity point. Going over to the 4 hour, yes, we are bullish, but like I said, weekly is bearish for me. We should take liquidity at this low, so I do not care about the swing structure at all in this instance. Now what can I see? We took liquidity above these highs over here, and we then started to trade down lower. So I would want to break this low, because we then create another daily supply zone, and then again, like you know the drill, we take liquidity above the highs, or that's what I'm waiting for, then a fractal break, and that's my point where I go short, enter here, stop loss here, trading down lower in towards this liquidity. So that's the game plan on Euro NZD. Looking at GBP NZD on the weekly time frame, what can I see? Yeah, this is clear bullish order flow though, so I'm looking for upside. I know it's counter what I'm looking for GBP AUD, but I'm just reading the technicals. And why am I saying this, guys? Because GBP AUD and GBP NZD look alike, just the same as Euro AD and Euro NZD. So if you have counter technicals on both, it's very high likelihood that one of them is going to be wrong. But in this instance, I see that we have bullish order flow, we took liquidity, so I'm looking for upside where I'm looking for downside on GBP AUD. So that's the thing here, which is quite tricky. But looking at the technicals, this is just purely gold. If you want to look for longs, you're daily bullish as well, took liquidity, daily demand, and now we're also inside this supply zone. So, or actually this supply zone. So what we will need to wait for is to break this supply, switch the order flow, then we could look for longs. And if we just start to break the lows, you could just look for shorts to take liquidity underneath these lows and then move up higher. But overall, I'm looking to trade up higher with the higher time frame bias, with the weekly time frame. So I'm going to be waiting for that order flow switch, break that high, then look for longs. Otherwise, I'm not going to take any short or any other trade here on GBP NZD. Yes, we are bearish here on the 4 hour, but like I said, higher time frame is better than just 4 hour structure. So I'm going to wait for those breaks on the daily in order to trade up higher in towards the highs again. If you want to trade in line with the 4 hour trend though, and you can see we tapped the premium prices as well as took liquidity above this high, then we got early sellers, swiped early sellers. So you could also wait and take shorts after you tap this open supply, take liquidity. You could take your short setups, but I'm not going to do that because of my higher time frame, which says that I want to take longs. So I'm going to wait for my weekly and daily and 4 hour to align in order to take a bullish setup. Going over to AD NZD, I was looking for longs in previous week, but I was being patient. Now what can I see? Well, this demand is in control, and I'm going to long possibly from this demand on the 1 hour time frame, for example, or see one more swipe of the lows, and then if we break up higher, I'm then going to go long to take all of the liquidity above these highs. Now, why am I looking for longs? Well, first of all, we're consolidating, but what can I see? We just came from this demand zone and pushed price back up higher in towards this supply. But I can also see that this is an imbalance candle, which we get a reaction from more clear on the daily time frame, this demand zone, and I think we could trade higher from this demand as well, because we also took a lot of liquidity above the low, under the lows. Then we took liquidity above the highs, but then we took some liquidity at the lows. So now I'm again looking to take liquidity above the highs and trade up higher. On the 4 hour time frame as well, what can we see? We are bearish, but this is a long time ago. Why is it not my swing? Like I said previously, in my other outlooks, this was all with Trump. So a lot of volatility. I'm not counting this as a structure. So that's why this still is my structure. But as you can see, this is very far away, and I could still see price trade up higher to take that liquidity above the highs. We perfectly took liquidity under the lows. So I'm definitely looking for some possible long setups. What would I be waiting for? Enough confirmation, one more demand to be created, and then I will look for those long setups to take liquidity above the highs. Going over to USD Swiss on the weekly time frame, what can I see? We just turned weekly fractal bearish, and this is your supply now in control. But what we often see and what you need to keep in mind, definitely with the fundamentals, is that we could trade up higher. Why? Because often we see that double internal boss. So let me show it. So we got this move down lower, then we had a move up higher, then down lower, then up higher, get an internal boss. Then we move down lower, up higher, an internal boss, which is this one. And then you grab liquidity underneath the first one, and then you move up higher. So you grab liquidity underneath the first one, and then you move up higher. So this is definitely possible. This is something that I see often whilst backtesting. So I'm going to keep that in mind, that is possible. How am I going to take my long setups? While looking at the daily time frame. So even though this supply here is in control and could push price down lower, I still want to trade towards these premium prices, and I know that we sometimes see that internal double internal boss liquidity grab, and then we could trade up higher. So I'm going to go over to the daily time frame, and if I see confirmation, then I'm still going to look for my long setups, and also because the fundamentals could be in line as well. So this daily fractal, or this is the daily fractal, I'm looking for that one to break, and then I would like to go long, because then you create a new demand, which is my confirmation that we could trade up higher. Or I would like to see the daily fractal low break, which could mean that this is going to be your daily fractal high, and then we could see that confirmation after breaking that fractal high. So I'm just waiting for a daily fractal high break in order to trade up higher and get my confirmation that I could take long setups towards these premium prices and liquidity. On the 4-hour time frame, we turned bearish though, but like I said, the weekly and the daily, they are stronger than just 4-hour structure, so that's just what I'm looking at. What can I see? This demand over here is in control on the 4-hour, but I would like to wait for my daily confirmation, because we are still inside this weekly supply, which I should be careful of. So that's why I want to wait for at least some daily confirmation. Looking at Euro Swiss, we are consolidative, so I'm not looking at any possible setups at the moment. We are inside this supply zone. We could take liquidity above the highs before moving down lower again, so that's definitely a possibility. But at the moment though, yeah, I think we could trade up higher in towards that supply zone and liquidity. But if we do so, the only setup that is valid for me is taking liquidity above this high and go for shorts, because that's in line with the order flow as well as the structure. Do I want to take long setups? Definitely possible with this demand in control and grabbing liquidity underneath this low. But like I said, Euro USD is for me, I'm looking to trade down lower. So that's a reason for me that I'm not going to take Euro Swiss longs, because I know that the Euro also fundamentally, personally for me, could also drop a little bit down lower. So that's just the reason why I'm a bit hesitant of those Euro Swiss longs. Looking at the structure, we are bearish, but we do have bullish order flow with this demand being in control, which could just push price definitely up higher in line with that order flow. So yeah, if we start to break the highs again, then I could definitely look for some longs if we see those demands being created after grabbing liquidity underneath the lows. So definitely possible to take liquidity at these highs. Definitely if we start breaking those highs, I'm definitely going to look for longs because it's looking clean. I gotta look at the fundamentals though, so I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to take this setup. Looking at GBP Swiss, we could definitely trade up higher though, although we are inside the supply zone. Now what do you see? We grab liquidity underneath this low. There's no liquidity in this move down, so we could expect to take liquidity above the high and just continue up higher. On the daily time frame, yes, we are bearish, but like I said, on the weekly time frame, no liquidity in this move down, so we could take the high out. So that's what I'm looking at, as long as that order flow stays bullish, which is also the case. You can see this demand is in control and is pushing price up higher. So then I go over to the 4-hour and see if we could take some long setups. So I can see that we take liquidity underneath the low. So after that, we created a demand zone. Now we have one more refined demand. Would like to see liquidity grab, tap in that demand, then my fractal break, like we always talk about, which is your confirmation that this demand is valid to push price up higher. Create a new demand from that fractal high break, and then I'm going to take possible long setups in towards those highs. So that's what I'm looking at, because we have no liquidity in the move down and we need to make a correction with this hard move down lower. I'm just looking to trade a bit up higher. Now keep in mind, we do have liquidity underneath these lows, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see one more swipe before moving up higher. So I'm definitely going to be very careful here, taking liquidity, then breaking the high, and then I would take a long setup and not just only after one fractal break. Going over to AUD Swiss on the weekly time frame, yeah, we definitely need to move up higher. We took liquidity underneath these lows and we have no liquidity in this move down, so I'm definitely looking to take liquidity above the highs. Looking at the daily, or actually looking at the weekly time frame, I perfectly called this. So we grab liquidity underneath this low, and that's when I said that I wanted to trade up higher, and this is beautifully playing out. So on the daily, it's also visible taking liquidity underneath this low, and then this was the perfect moment to take your long setups to trade up higher. You also literally broke your daily fractal high over here, so that was also perfect. So you could have even taken this daily trade, which is absolutely a perfect setup, and this is going to be your 3 risk reward which you could have taken. So this setup for me is absolutely a plus. Grabbing liquidity underneath the low, so we definitely need to trade towards this no, because we didn't take any liquidity at all. So I'm just going to look for possible higher prices. On the 4-hour, what can I see? So on the 4-hour time frame, I see that we grab liquidity underneath this low, and then we created a new demand zone. So this demand is in control. What I would like to see is, of course, some more liquidity to be grabbed underneath all of these equals over here. See a swipe, then I want to see my fractal break, and then I'm going to take my long setup. So my fractal high is this one. So if we see that liquidity getting taken out, I want to see my fractal high, and then I'm going to take a long setups in towards those highs, and especially this high. But in the end, I'm of course trying to target this weekly liquidity. So that's my game plan on AD Swiss. NZD Swiss is going to be the same, bullish order flow. So from this demand, you take liquidity underneath the low. If you start to break up higher, you could just continue to take long setups. On the weekly though, again visible, you tap this supply but no liquidity in the move down, so you could take liquidity above the high. Still the premium prices to get tapped, so we could still trade up higher. Daily time frame, we grab liquidity underneath these lows, which fueled the next move up higher. And the order flow is also bullish, still this demand in control, and that's why I'm also looking to trade up higher in towards premium prices and that weekly liquidity which I talked about. So 4 hours also bullish, tap discount prices, grab liquidity up higher, grab liquidity up higher. So wouldn't be surprised if we grab some more liquidity underneath this low, but we at least grab liquidity underneath this low. If we start to break up higher, I'm definitely going to keep on longing this pair, and that's also what I'm going to do. So looking at CAD Swiss, a lot of liquidity above these highs over here, so we could trade up higher. Looking at the weekly time frame, we have exactly the same thing, grabbing liquidity underneath the low, and we could trade up higher in towards those premium prices. I do see that we also have some internal liquidity at that high, which is more visible on the daily. So at those premium prices, we perfectly have some internal liquidity, which I want to trade towards. And as you can see, we also have a daily fractal break over here. And now what I would be waiting on is currently for this daily fractal, or wait, this was a fractal low. Yeah, this daily fractal to be broken. Let's see if we broke that daily fractal. We actually did. So we already created a new demand zone right over here. So I'm already looking for those long setups because we now have that double fractal break in towards the upside, which gives us enough confirmation that we could trade towards this liquidity. Looking at the 4 hour over here, yeah, definitely again, bullish order flow, take liquidity at the lows up higher, liquidity at the lows up higher. So clear. So what I'm now going to be looking at, take liquidity, fractal break up higher. So that's what I'm going to be looking at for CAD Swiss, taking all that liquidity next week and the week after that, because it's still a big move that should happen. USD CAD, beautiful setup that played out. Also made a trade breakdown on this one, but we grab liquidity above the high, so then we grab liquidity at the low. Now we tap this demand zone, and now I could expect to trade up higher to trade towards this overall supply zone, because we made connection with my order flow, which is bullish, and that's why I'm looking for longs. On the daily, we're also swing bullish. We took liquidity underneath the lows, and let me see. This supply is currently in control. So if we start to break the supply zones and create demand zones, so if we break the high, create a demand zone, I'm looking for longs here on USD CAD. definitely in towards this higher supply zone and this liquidity which missed the supply. So if we start to break that order flow, yeah, I'm looking for those longs in towards this high, but I'm being patient because this could be your early buyers, which you then swipe and then trade up higher. So be patient here and wait for enough confirmation, and definitely wait for daily confirmation, and yeah, not just a 4-hour confirmation here. This is your demand zone where we could trade up higher from. That's very possible to take liquidity above this high, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see one more swipe before moving up higher, because this over here is your first step in towards the demand zone, which is often early buyers which could get swiped, and people don't know why, but that's just because early buyers most of the time get swiped, and then after a break you could start to look for those longs. So that's definitely something to keep in mind here, to trade up higher, to be very patient and wait for a beautiful low to be created. Looking at EuroCAD, as you can see, I'm not going to review this pair because as you can see, we're just consolidating and I don't know what to do at the moment. So if we take liquidity above the highs, you could look for shorts, but again, that's not something I would advise here. We have a lot of liquidity open, so we could trade up higher. We have a lot of liquidity open at the low, so we could trade down lower. We are overall bullish though, but we are respecting the lows as well as respecting the highs, so we could get a spike up, we could get a spike down, but that's, in my opinion, is just gambling, and with my risk management I don't want to gamble, so I'm just going to step out, and I do not know what this price is going to do. So if you see this price action consolidation, just wait and trade any other pair. Looking over here at GBP CAD, what can we see? That we beautifully respected this supply zone, created new supply zones to push price down lower. Now looking on the weekly time frame though, this is going to be my 4-hour boxes as well as this one, but looking on the weekly time frame, this demand over here pushed price back up higher, so we could just continue to trade up higher because as you can see we have bullish order flow, so definitely possible. On the daily time frame we also are bullish, tap discount prices, grab liquidity, tap demand, create new demand, and now we could just trade up higher after grabbing this liquidity, and then we could just continue to trade up higher in towards that swing high. Now the only thing that is concerning me is this open demand zone where we could see one more tap swiping all of these buyers and then we trade up higher. So am I going to take a short setup? No, because like I said, there's a possibility that we could trade up higher in line with the trend, the discount prices and everything. Am I going to take a long setup? No, because we could still see one more swipe before trading up higher. So what setup is valid for me? Only a long from this demand zone. Unfortunately, this demand zone is far away, so I don't think that this is going to be a trade for next week, but a week maybe after that, unless we just trade up higher. But if we just start to trade up higher, then I will not capture any trade because I will not know, or I don't think that that's any valid setup. Now, if you, for example, see a swipe of this low, so we grab liquidity with possible early buyers. If you see a swipe of that low and then you break, for example, the internal structure, which is down, up, down, and then you break the high of that internal structure, then you could start to look for possible longs, knowing that this could be a possible strong low, which I guess you could be looking at, which is definitely possible though. So if we start to swipe this low, then get your internal structure bullish, and then you could look for longs to continue up higher and take liquidity above the highs, trade towards the swing high. Looking at NZD-CAD, we still have bullish order flow, so I could still expect some upside. We do also have some more liquidity over here, but again, the same thing, we are consolidating, so this is quite tricky to take any setup long or short. Now overall, the order flow is holding and we have some liquidity to push price up higher, but this is not going to be an A+ setup, whatever you're trying to do. So yeah, we could see a swipe of the lows, and that's definitely a point where I will take long setups. But if we just trade up higher, that's also possible, but then I'm going to take a short setup after taking liquidity above the high. So that are my both things that I'm waiting on, but definitely not for next week because we are inside this consolidative phase. The only thing that I could see happen is a quick swipe. Then I would wait for my 4-hour order flow switch or fractal break, and that, which is not the same by the way, but yeah, if I see, for example, all of these liquidity lows get swiped, then I will look for a 4-hour fractal break, which is immediate confirmation that this liquidity is going to push price up higher in towards the high. Looking at 80 cat, yeah, we had all of this trend line liquidity. Looking at the weekly time frame first, we do have this supply, but like I said, guys, we took a lot of liquidity underneath the lows on all pairs, and now this is my first liquidity point, which we didn't yet grab, and now these are equal highs. So I think we could still see a swipe up higher to grab those equal highs. So over here on the daily time frame, that's my liquidity as well as an open supply zone, so give me more confirmation that we could start to trade up higher. And then what can we see? We broke the daily fractal high over here, and yeah, then this means that this is going to be your demand zone where we could trade up higher from. So definitely looking for upside here on 80 Swiss or 80 cat. Then this is going to be your demand zone first, and then this next demand is also going to be in control. So that is your demand zone in control. And then what I would like to see is some liquidity grab at the low, of course, because I like to take liquidity before taking my entry. We take liquidity, then for example this is your fractal high, then we could start to look for longs, and that's definitely what I'm waiting for, because then in this instance, after breaking that high, you have a super strong low because it takes liquidity. So that's what I'm waiting on in order to trade up higher in line with that order flow, and yeah, just take out all of the trend line liquidity to trade inside that supply and those equal highs. So that's what I'm waiting for on 80 cat. Looking at the yen basket, I'm not sure because we are bullish, but let's first go over to the weekly time frame. But yeah, still a bit confusing in my opinion. So we have this demand zone which is in control, which could push price up higher. We are also bullish and we have bullish order flow, so we could definitely trade up higher. On the daily time frame, we also have this daily demand being in control, and now that we took this daily liquidity underneath this low, we could see a reaction up higher. So that's definitely possible. Now the only thing is that there is also some liquidity at the lows which we could take out before moving up higher, for example, or just take out all of the liquidity at the lows. Now on the 4-hour time frame, we are bullish though, so we should respect this low. We do have some more liquidity, so if we take that out, get some confirmation, we could start to trade up higher in towards all of these liquidity highs. But I would be careful, yeah, because this is definitely quite tricky to take any long setups, because we are just having also bullish or bearish order flow, because every single high is getting respected and we are trading down lower, and down lower. So what's the only point where I would take a long setup? Grabbing liquidity, then swiping some highs, actually breaking highs, and then we could start to look for longs. That's also what I'm waiting for. Again, if you are not exactly sure what you need to wait on or what setup you need to take, then be very patient and wait for enough development so that you are sure again of your bias. So looking at euro yen, we took liquidity above the high, so we could definitely see a move down lower. So on the weekly time frame, we now have this demand in control and we kept on pushing up higher. So we could also just continue to trade up higher to take some more liquidity above this high and tap in towards this refined supply zone. So that's definitely possible. Looking at the daily time frame here, yeah, this supply is not in control anymore, but this demand is. So we could see a quick retracement, tapping that demand and then continue up higher. That's definitely possible. So I'm looking for a small short setup towards this demand, because we could definitely see this move, then either trade up higher or down lower. But what move is something that we could at least expect, this move down lower. So I'm going to wait on a 4-hour time frame in order to take a possible short setup in towards what? In towards a daily demand, as well as some 4-hour liquidity, which is located at this low, which we could take out in line with the PVD and get a little retracement in towards that liquidity, in towards that demand, and close to that discount prices in order to then move up higher again. So I'm definitely looking for those short setups here if we see that confirmation also on the yen basket. So we gotta move down lower. Then I would like to see one more swipe, then the fractal low becomes this low. I would like to see that fractal break, creating supply, and then I would like to trade down lower in towards this liquidity. So that's what I'm waiting on. Looking at GBP yen, I'm definitely looking for a little move up higher. Why? On the weekly, it's a bit more clear. We do have some liquidity above these highs, so I would like to see a swipe before looking for those short setups. On the daily, we also have this imbalance candle over here, which I'm looking to tap, as well as take liquidity above these highs before looking for any shorts. Again, what can we see? This kind of trend being made. So if we see that swipe one more time, that's your 1, 2, and third tap, perfectly aligning with that supply and that liquidity. So what am I going to short from that supply and trade down low to take some liquidity at the lows? On the 4-hour time frame, yeah, I'm definitely not going too long anymore, because I'm just waiting for those A plus shorts from that supply zone. So I'm waiting for that supply zone to get tapped. You know the drill, wait for the fractal break as our confirmation. Then we have a supply zone to then trade down lower to take some liquidity at these lows. So that's again what I'm waiting for on GBP yen. Looking at the USD yen, I kind of have a mixed bias, but yeah, let's start off with the weekly. So on the weekly time frame, what did we do? We grabbed liquidity underneath this low. So that's 100% sure. And we also just traded in towards this demand zone here on the weekly time frame, which could push price all the way up higher. So that's definitely possible, but at the moment this supply is still in control, and we still have some more liquidity, of course, open at this ultimate low. And if we swipe this low, that would swipe a lot of people. So I wouldn't, be surprised if we actually saw that swipe, because then a lot of traders would hit their stop loss, and then we could see them move up higher. So I'm going to be a little patient here, wait on a daily and a 4-hour to see if we're already going to trade up higher from this demand zone and this liquidity, or if we are having one more swipe before moving up higher. Looking at the daily, what do I see? Yeah, we are bearish over here. And we still have those premium prices open over here where we could trade towards. Looking at the daily order flow, the daily order flow, clearly this demand is still in control, or actually this demand is not in control, but this supply is in control because we broke the low over here. So this supply is in control, and this could mean that we push down lower. We also do have some more liquidity at these lows, one more swipe before trading up higher. So that's definitely possible from the supply zone. Now looking on the 4-hour, how we are going to react. Well, we do have this supply which we now have traded in, which also took liquidity above this high. So I wouldn't be surprised if we trade down lower and take liquidity at these lows over here. So that's definitely possible because we're also swing bearish, and I wouldn't mind if we see one more swipe before moving up higher. Now what would I wait for? Of course, my 4-hour fractal creating new supply. Now you could look for those short setups. Personally, I'm not a favorite, or this is not my favorite setup, because we could just continue up higher in line with that daily structure and the daily premium prices, and from there could short all the way down lower. So that's just why I'm not preferring this pair and would like to trade any other pair next week. So keep that in mind. But overall, if you look at the 4-hour, we are bearish with took liquidity. We have supply that took liquidity as well, so we could just trade down lower, but we are starting to respect the lows and continue to push up higher. So keep that in mind, that this is also possible. But yeah, let's go over to the next pair and let's analyze that one. So on the weekly time frame, again, like we said, guys, we took liquidity at the lows, so I want to take liquidity at the highs. Now we took some internal liquidity over here, so that's definitely a possibility to push price down lower, but we could also take some more liquidity above the highs. That's something we gotta see with our confirmation on the lower time frame. On the daily, you can see that this supply is still in control, which took liquidity above this high. So am I going to take long setups up higher to take liquidity? Not at the moment. Only if we break this high, then you could start to look for longs. So I'm looking at shorts now. So yeah, we took liquidity above the high. We have this supply zone which we have been created, or what we have created. We're also structure wise bearish, so definitely looking nice here to take those short setups. And then this is going to be your liquidity that you have taken out. So what I'm going to be waiting on is my 4-hour confirmation in order to actually take some short setups. Now, of course, you can see that after this liquidity grab, we are respecting lows and moving up higher. So I would like to see some sort of order flow switch actually breaking lows and then creating actual supply, which we could then use to short from to trade all the way underneath these lows. That's my game plan over here on AD yen. On NZD yen, what am I looking at? So let's see. On the weekly time frame, we grab liquidity above the high, so that's quite important. We grab liquidity above these highs, which could push price down lower. Looking at the daily time frame, we still have open supply with some more liquidity, but we did have that liquidity that we took out and caused this supply to be created, but we already caused a new supply to be created, which we then broke. So then we caused a demand to be created, and now we caused a new demand to be created on Friday after breaking that high. So now this is your demand in control, and you could push up higher in towards that high. But like I said, we already took liquidity, so this is not the best pair to go short from or go long from, because we already took that weekly liquidity, which was the ultimate goal, and longs should have been captured over here and here, which I also did. So this is going to be an order flow, just going to be bullish, and yeah, in my opinion, long or short, not an A plus setup here in my opinion, because it's quite tricky. We could either trade down lower because we took liquidity and are inside this supply, but we could also trade up higher with that order flow and that daily and 4-hour supply, as well as some more liquidity. But the best thing here is from this supply zone, after grabbing liquidity, to then take short setups. So let's wait for that. That's my go-to, because that's the only thing what I'm 100% sure of and where I have 100% a short bias. So that's also my go-to here for next week, because I only take my trades where I feel 100% comfortable, because I know that then I will hold myself to my risk management. So here on Swiss yen, you can see that we've just been continuing to trade up higher. We have a higher time frame supply and some more liquidity. So in my opinion, we could just continue to trade up higher. Here also you have your daily swing over here, and then we could just trade up higher in towards a new daily swing. Yes, we do have some liquidity at the lows, but we gotta look at the facts, and we are breaking the highs again and again. So this demand will be created, I think, after we break this high, of course. Then we could continue to trade up higher from that demand zone in towards this supply. So yeah, I'm looking to just continue to trade up higher. Definitely after we break this 4-hour structure, what I'm going to be looking at is a pullback, take some liquidity, get my confirmation again, and then long in line with that bullish order flow. Quite tricky because we have a lot of liquidity at the lows, but I think that it's definitely possible to see something like this, for example. And that's the point where I go long. This would be at the end of the week or maybe even next week, but we gotta see what price does and how fast price will move. But this is definitely something that I'm looking at, which is an A plus setup, because we took liquidity, we are swing bullish, and we trade with the higher time frame, which should trade towards that higher time frame supply. Going over to CAD yen, we have been pushing up higher here on CAD yen in towards the highs, and this is your supply zone now where we should trade towards. And we also do have some more open liquidity over here at the highs, which we should definitely worry about if you are looking for shorts. So what am I going to do? Again, be patient, wait for my higher time frame supply or my supply, then grab some liquidity, and then I'm going to look for those short setups in towards the lows. So this is also my swing high, and after breaking a swing high, you could see a possible short setup in towards those discount prices. So looking at the weekly here, yeah, this supply is in control here, but after we break that high, which I'm expecting to take liquidity, we then create this as our demand zone, and we could then just see something like this, boom, get a small reaction down lower, and then trade up higher because you then create a demand zone. So that's what I'm looking for. Again, this is my internal liquidity over here on the 4 hour, and this is your refined the supply zone. So I'm looking to tap that, and then on the 4 hour look for my fractal break, and then create a supply zone, and then I'm going to go short in towards, for example, this amount, and then from here I'm going to look up for higher prices again. So looking at my last pair here on Euro GBP actually, so what can we see? Well, of course, let's take a look. We took a lot of liquidity at the lows, but then we got an immense manipulation swiping all of the liquidity above the highs. So what am I looking for? To trade down lower and take out all of the lows, and from then to trade all the way in towards this open demand zone. Why? Because we had a huge manipulation move, and I'm now looking for that distribution in towards this open demand, which is quite obvious for me. So I'm going to keep on shorting and shorting, even though the daily structure is bullish. So what do I see? This is my order flow, which is bearish, and this is where it stopped. So I'm waiting for a swipe to make connection again with that order flow, and also swiping liquidity of all the sellers over here trying to get into this selling game. So I'm waiting for that, grab liquidity above the high, then connect again with that bearish order flow, and then taking those short setups, because what can we see? A lot of liquidity taken above the highs, no liquidity in the move up. So after this break, people are going to assume that we could trade up higher, but after this liquidity getting grabbed and connection with the order flow, I know that we're going to trade down lower to take all of this liquidity. So I'm definitely going to look for shorts here on Euro GBP, and I will be quick with it because I would like to catch this trade, and I think that after swiping this high, we could see a quick move because we swipe a lot of sellers who are trying to sell this pair. So I would like to see a liquidity grab, and then I would like to see, of course, the fractal break and creating this supply where I'm then going to short from in towards all of these lows. So that's going to be it for this week. I hope you liked it, and I hope you got some biases for yourself as well. And let's get the best trading out of next week. So thank you guys for listening, and see you in the next one. Ciao.